The Catharians were dying. Commander Teo stood in the great observatory of his people, watching the screens display nothing but darkness and fire. Stars were going out, not falling into darkness like stars normally did when they collapsed at the end of their lives. These stars were being consumed by something alive, something hungry. The Void Plague, they called it. It had started 3 cycles ago at the edge of their space, and now it was coming toward them like an unstoppable wave. Teo's long fingers moved across the ancient control panel. His skin had the pale blue color of all Catharians, and his large eyes reflected the dying light of stars in their galaxy. He was old, older than most of his people, and he had seen many dangers in his life. But nothing like this. Nothing like the Void Plague. The High Council had made their decision. One desperate, impossible decision. They would perform the summoning. It was an ancient ritual, so old that most of the instructions had been lost to time. The texts spoke of the first ones, the beings who had created all life in the galaxy billions of years ago. The texts said these first ones were gods. They said the first ones could do anything. They said they could save any civilization that called for their help. Jiwan, the head of research, stood beside him. She was younger than Teo, but her face showed the same worry, the same fear. "Commander, the ritual is ready," she said quietly. "All the ancient machines are working. We have translated the old words as best as we can. But I must tell you, the Council knows this might not work. We might be wasting our last resources." "We have no choice," Teo replied. His voice was calm, but inside him a storm of emotions was fighting to escape. "If we do nothing, we die. If we perform the summoning, maybe we live. The math is simple." Around them, the observatory filled with light. Machines that had not been used for thousands of years began to turn on. They hummed with power. Ancient technology, so advanced that modern Catharians only half understood it, came to life. The ritual began. Teo began to speak the old words. The language was different from how Catharians spoke now, harder to pronounce, older and deeper. But he had practiced for weeks. His voice filled the chamber. "Hear us, First Ones. Hear us from across the stars. Hear us across time and space. We call to you. Our people face destruction. We call to you, ancient and great ones. Answer us. Help us. Save us from the darkness that comes." The machines grew louder. A brilliant beam of light shot upward from the observatory, piercing through the atmosphere of their world. It was beautiful and terrible. In that moment, Teo felt like they were truly reaching toward something divine, something powerful and ancient. Then something went wrong. Jiwan shouted a warning. "Commander! Something is wrong with the dimensional lock. The gateway is—" The machines began to shake. Alarms filled the space. The beam of light twisted, bent in a direction that should have been impossible. The coordinates were changing. The ritual was supposed to reach out to the first ones, wherever they were in the universe. But instead, the beam was locking on to a different target. A target that was not in their records at all. "Stop the ritual," Teo commanded, but it was too late. The gateway was already open. The beam had already locked onto its target, and somewhere very far away, a primitive world with a primitive species was receiving the message that should have gone to the gods. On Earth, at the United Nations headquarters in New York, something extraordinary happened. Every scientific instrument that could detect radiation lit up at the same time. Seismic sensors trembled. Radio telescopes that had been quietly listening to the stars for 100 years suddenly screamed with activity. Every screen in every space agency in the world displayed the same impossible message. A signal from deep space, a signal in a language no one had ever heard, a signal that, through the magic of computer translation, contained a simple and clear message. "Help us. We are dying. Please help us." Admiral Do-hyun was in his office when the call came. He was the most decorated naval commander in the history of human space exploration. He had led missions to Mars, to the asteroid belt, and to the moons of Jupiter. He had been retired for 6 months and was enjoying the quiet of his small home by the sea. The United Nations did not call lightly, not on military channels, not with the sirens and the urgency he could hear through the phone. "Admiral, we need you," the voice said. It was Secretary General Park, the leader of the world government. "Something has happened, something that will change everything. Can you come to headquarters right now?" Do-hyun was moving before the question was even finished. Whatever this was, it was big. He could hear it in the Secretary General's voice. When he arrived at the headquarters 2 hours later, every important person on Earth seemed to be in the room. Scientists, military leaders, politicians, and diplomats were packed into the war room, staring at screens and talking over each other in desperate voices. Do-hyun pushed through them quietly. He was used to chaos. He had lived in it his whole life. "What do we know?" he asked, his voice cutting through the noise like a knife. Secretary General Park stepped forward. "Aliens, Admiral. Real aliens. They are sending a distress signal from somewhere beyond the rim of our known space. They say their civilization is dying. They say they sent out a call for help, and their signal somehow reached us. Our scientists believe this is real. It is not a test or a hoax. It is real." Do-hyun felt something shift in his chest. This was what every human had dreamed of for centuries. Contact with intelligent life from another world. But it was not the beautiful, peaceful meeting they had imagined. These aliens were desperate. They were dying. "Show me the message," he said. What he saw on the screens made his military mind work quickly. The images showed worlds being consumed by something dark and terrible. Star systems were collapsing. Entire populations were being wiped out. Whatever was happening to these aliens, it was catastrophic. "How long ago did they send this message?" Do-hyun asked. "We are not sure," one of the scientists answered. "The signal appears to have traveled a long way. Based on the degradation and the distance calculations, we estimate this happened weeks ago. They could already be dead. All of them." The room went quiet. No one wanted to think about that. Admiral Do-hyun stood tall. His mind was already making decisions, already planning. "We send a fleet," he said. "We combine the best ships from every space program on Earth. We prepare for anything. Medical supplies, weapons, scientists, engineers, everything. We send our best people. We send them now." "But Admiral," someone said nervously, "we do not even know if these aliens are friendly. We do not know if this is a trap." "Then we prepare for that too," Do-hyun replied. "But if another intelligent species is dying and they called for help, and by some miracle that call reached us, then we answer. That is what humans do. We answer calls for help. We send our best people, and we hope it is not too late." The room full of leaders looked at each other, and slowly, one by one, they nodded their agreement. Humanity would reach out. Humanity would send a fleet to save a dying civilization they knew nothing about. Humanity would answer a call from across the stars. And no one in that room had any idea how much that decision would change their world forever. The first 2 weeks after the signal arrived were complete chaos. Every space agency on Earth that had ever launched a rocket was now mobilizing. Ships that had been in dry dock for years were being prepared for launch. New ships were being fitted with the latest human weapons and technology. The governments of the world, which had spent most of the last century fighting each other, were finally working together on something that mattered. Admiral Do-hyun established a command center in the middle of the Pacific Ocean on a massive platform. From here, he could see every ship being prepared, every supply being loaded, every soldier being trained for a mission that no human had ever attempted before. The responsibility was enormous. He was not just commanding a military operation, he was representing all of humanity. In the diplomatic wing of the platform, Minseo was working with translators and linguists from every country that had joined the mission. Her job was just as important as the admiral's, maybe more so. She had to figure out how to speak with these aliens once they arrived in Catharian space. She had to understand what they truly wanted and if they could be trusted. Minseo was brilliant. She had spent her whole life studying languages and cultures. She had a gift for understanding how different peoples thought and communicated. Now, she sat in front of screens displaying the alien signal, listening to it over and over again, trying to find patterns, trying to understand the meaning behind the sounds. "Play it again," she told her team. A woman named So-Ri, one of the best linguists in the world, pressed a button. The alien words filled the room again. At first, they sounded like nothing, just strange noises from a species that did not make sounds like humans. But Minseo's brain was working, finding patterns, finding meaning. After thousands of hours of listening and analyzing, she had made progress. The aliens were called Catharians. They came from a region of space that humans had never explored. They had a civilization that was very old, older than human civilization by millions of years, and they were being destroyed by something they called the Void Plague. But something troubled Minseo. She studied the communications from the Catharians more carefully, looking at the patterns of how they transmitted their messages, looking at the way they spoke about help arriving. She called a meeting with Admiral Do-hyun. "Sir, I need to show you something important," she said when she entered his office. Do-hyun looked up from his work. He had not slept in 30 hours. He looked tired, but his eyes were sharp. "What is it?" "The Catharians think we are sending them a single small ship," Minseo explained. She pulled up a recording of the alien communications. "Listen to the way they describe the incoming help. They expect one vessel. They expect a small crew. They are surprised but hopeful about this. But, Admiral, they do not know we are sending over 300 ships with 50,000 soldiers, engineers, and scientists." Do-hyun's eyes widened slightly. "They think we sent one ship?" "Yes, sir. Our sensors showed that their communication abilities are damaged. Their home systems are being destroyed. They are receiving our fleet movements, but they are interpreting them incorrectly. I believe their damaged sensors are showing them one massive contact, and their damaged computers are analyzing it as one very large ship. When they see 300 ships, they will think something very different than what they are expecting." "What are they expecting?" Do-hyun asked. Minseo hesitated. This was the important part. "Sir, based on the old mythology and the way they speak about the first ones, they are expecting gods. They performed an ancient ritual to summon divine beings. They believe they are about to be saved by all-powerful creatures that created their civilization. When they see humans, when they realize we are just another species, not gods, I do not know how they will react." Do-hyun stood up and walked to the window. He could see ships being prepared below. He thought about the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. He was about to take humanity's greatest military force and lead it to meet an alien civilization that was expecting gods to arrive. "We need to prepare for first contact very carefully," he said finally. "We need to assume they might be disappointed. We need to assume they might be angry. We need to assume they might think this is a trick or an invasion. Captain Jun-ho will command the lead ship. He is our best first contact officer. Minseo, you will be the head of our diplomatic team. You will be the first human these aliens meet." Jun-ho was a captain in the space military, and he had trained his whole life for leadership. He was calm under pressure. He understood both military tactics and the delicate nature of diplomacy. When Admiral Do-hyun called him into the command center and explained the situation, Jun-ho felt the weight of history fall onto his shoulders. "We do not know how they will react," Do-hyun told him. "We do not know if they are trustworthy. But we are going in with peaceful intentions first. You will take the fastest ship we have and arrive at their space first. You will open communications with Minseo's diplomatic team. You will make the first human contact with an alien civilization." "Understood, sir," Junho replied. But inside, he was terrified. He was 28 years old, and he was about to change the entire history of human civilization. The weeks of preparation were intense. Minseo and her team prepared speeches in the Catharian language. They studied everything they could learn about Catharian culture, their values, their fears, their hopes. Junho trained with his crew, running through countless scenarios of first contact. What if the aliens were hostile? What if they tried to take over the ship? What if they were peaceful but did not believe humans could help them? Finally, after 2 months of preparation, the fleet was ready. 300 ships, all heading toward the distant space where the Catharians were dying. The fastest ships would arrive in 6 months, the slowest would arrive in 2 years. But they were coming. As the ships began to launch, leaving Earth orbit one by one, humanity held its breath. Every person on Earth knew what was happening. Every person understood that something monumental was occurring. Some people were afraid, some were excited, but all of them understood that human civilization had changed forever. Admiral Do-hyun stood in his command center and watched the first ship launch. Captain Junho's vessel rose into the sky, breaking free from Earth's gravity, heading toward the stars. Do-hyun whispered a prayer that was old, older than any human religion. A simple prayer: "Let us be worthy of this moment. Let us be brave. Let us be good." The journey to Catharian space would take months. But the moment humanity left Earth to answer a call for help from across the stars, something fundamental changed. Humans were no longer alone. Humans were no longer a species that only looked inward. Humans were reaching out, hoping to save a civilization they did not know, hoping to prove that intelligence and goodness could exist in a harsh universe. 6 months of space travel felt like 6 years. Captain Junho had spent most of his time on the bridge of his ship, watching the empty darkness of space. His crew was skilled and professional, but the tension was always there. They were heading toward an unknown destination to meet an alien species that might be dead by the time they arrived. The first thing they saw was the destroyed stars. Junho was looking at his star charts when his science officer called out, "Captain, we are entering the Catharian region. I am reading massive energy signatures, multiple star systems showing catastrophic collapse events." Junho moved to the observation screen. What he saw made his breath catch in his throat. Stars were gone. Not just fading like old stars. They were consumed, destroyed, turned to nothing. Entire star systems had been erased. This was not natural disaster. This was war on a scale that humans had never imagined. "Get me to the Catharian homeworld," Junho ordered. "Carefully, and keep all weapons ready." As they approached the main Catharian world, the situation became clearer and more terrible. Planets hung in space, some still glowing from recent fires, some reduced to rubble. The Catharian homeworld itself was still mostly intact, but it showed signs of damage. Shield generators were still active. Military ships were moving through space, defending the remaining population. But there were not many of them. The Catharian military had been decimated. There were perhaps 50 military vessels remaining. 50 ships to defend an entire civilization. It was nothing. Junho opened a communication channel. Minseo was back on another ship, but she was monitoring all communications. Her voice came through his earpiece, calm and professional, even though he could hear the emotion beneath it. "Captain, you are approaching their primary defense grid. They are asking for identification. I am sending our prepared message now." The message was transmitted in Catharian, translated by humanity's best computers. It said, "This is Captain Junho of the human civilization from the planet Earth. We received your distress call. We have come to help." For a long moment, there was silence. Junho realized he was holding his breath. Then a response came, a voice, alien and strange, but speaking words that the human computers could understand. Impossible. You cannot be real. The first ones do not come in fleets. The first ones are solitary. You must be an illusion or a trick by the plague. Junho looked at Minseo on the video screen. She had a sad smile on her face. This was what she had predicted. The Catharians had been expecting gods. They were being given humans instead. "We are not gods," Minseo said into the communication device. Her voice was gentle but strong. "We are humans. We are a living species just like you. We received your call for help and we answered because that is what living beings do. We help each other. Please allow us to come close. Allow us to speak with your leadership." Another pause. This one seemed to last forever. Junho could imagine the Catharian commanders arguing about this, deciding if this was a trick, deciding if they should trust aliens that they had never heard of. Finally, the response came. "You may approach our space station. But know this, humans. If you are the Void Plague in a new form, if you try to destroy us, you will find that we still have teeth." Over the next few hours, Junho's ship carefully moved toward the main Catharian space station. The station was large and ancient, clearly designed to support millions of people, but much of it was dark now. Much of it was empty. Junho realized that the Catharians were crowding their remaining population into the parts of the station that were still functioning. When the airlock opened, Junho saw Commander Teo for the first time. The Catharian was tall, nearly 7 feet, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes that seemed to look right through him. He was old, probably very old for his species. Around him stood other Catharians, all wearing military uniforms, all looking suspicious and afraid. Junho did something that Minseo had suggested. He removed his weapons belt and set it on the ground, a human gesture of peace, a gesture of trust. The Catharians looked shocked, but Teo understood. "I am Commander Teo," the alien said. "You truly are not from any civilization we know of." "I am Captain Junho," he replied. "And behind me, coming to your space, are 300 ships filled with my people. We have come to help you fight the Void Plague. We have scientists, weapons, and warriors. We have come to save your civilization." Teo looked at him for a long moment. Then something that might have been a smile crossed his face. "You are not gods. You are something stranger. You are beings so far removed from divinity that you still believe you can change fate. Come, let me show you what we face." What the Catharians showed humanity was horrifying. The Void Plague was not like anything humans had ever imagined. It was not simply a weapon or a disease. It was alive. It was intelligent. It moved through space like a living thing, consuming everything it touched, learning from each conquest, adapting to every defense that the Catharians threw at it. But the Catharians had been defending themselves for years, using ancient tactics, weapons designed for wars with other civilizations, not against a plague that was alive and thinking. When they showed human scientists the data, the humans saw something different. One of the researchers, Ha Yul, was a young woman with brilliant eyes and a mind that worked faster than most humans could think. She studied the genetic data of the Void Plague for hours, and then she called a meeting. "It is not invincible," she told the room full of Catharians and humans. "It is intelligent, yes. It adapts, yes. But it has a weakness. Look here. In the genetic code, it consumes through slow assimilation. It integrates the systems it conquers into its own structure. But if you hit it with something it cannot adapt to quickly enough, if you give it multiple threats at the same time, it can be overwhelmed." Commander Teo leaned forward. "What do you suggest?" Ha Yul looked at Admiral Do Yun, who had arrived on one of the later ships. Do-hyun nodded for her to continue. "We use the plague's own strategy against it," Ha-Yul said. "We create a weapon based on genetic engineering, something that changes faster than it can adapt to. We combine it with electromagnetic pulses. We do not fight it the way you have been fighting it. We overwhelm it. We attack it with constant rapid changes. The Catharian military has been defending. Humans prefer to attack. Maybe together we can do what neither of us could do alone." For the first time, the Catharians saw hope. They had been dying slowly, gradually losing more worlds with each passing month. But now, they had an ally. An unexpected ally. A species that was not divine, but was something almost as good. A species that was creative, aggressive, and willing to fight. Admiral Do-hyun and Commander Tae-oh began to plan the first real assault on the Void Plague. And for the first time in a long time, the Catharians believed that their civilization might actually survive. The first attack came 3 weeks after the human fleet arrived in full force. Admiral Do-hyun stood in the command center, watching screens that displayed a star system that was already half consumed by the Void Plague. The plan was simple but dangerous. They would attack one system with everything they had. They would try Ha-Yul's weapon for the first time in actual combat. "All ships take position," Do-hyun commanded. His voice was steady, but his hands were tight on the edge of the control console. Hundreds of ships moved into place. Human vessels mixed with Catharian warships. It was the first true joint military operation in the history of either species. Dr. Yoon-ji, a human geneticist who had worked with Ha-Yul to develop the weapon, was in the laboratory section of the flagship. The weapon was contained in a special containment field. It was tiny, barely visible to the human eye, but it was deadly. It was a self-replicating virus designed to attack the genetic structure of the Void Plague and break it down from inside. Combined with the electromagnetic pulse weapons, it should destroy the plague's ability to defend itself. "Weapon is ready," Yoon-ji reported through the communication system. "Fire," Do-hyun ordered. The attack was brutal and fast. The electromagnetic pulses hit first, disrupting the plague's defenses, overloading its systems. Then the virus was released, spreading through the star system in specially designed containment pods. The pods dissolved, releasing the virus into the space where the plague consumed the remains of planets. For the first few minutes, nothing happened. Then, suddenly, the plague began to die. The dark, consuming mass of the Void Plague started to collapse. It writhed and twisted, trying to adapt, trying to survive. But it could not. The virus was changing too fast. The damage was spreading too quickly. The plague, for the first time in its terrible existence, was dying. The Catharians watching the battle erupted in celebration. Commander Tae-oh stood still, his large eyes watching the screens. The plague was being defeated. It was actually being defeated, but the victory came with a cost that nobody had anticipated. When the plague died, it released massive amounts of radiation and contaminated matter into space. 3 human ships and 2 Catharian ships were caught in the wave. They disappeared in an instant. Hundreds of crew members were gone. The celebration stopped immediately. On the screens, Admiral Do-hyun watched the names of the dead being reported. Young men and women, human and Catharian alike. People he had known, people who had families waiting for them back on Earth or in the Catharian worlds. "Admiral," Captain Junho said quietly over the communication, "the war has a price, but we won." Do-hyun nodded slowly. Yes, they had won. But at what cost? Over the following months, the pattern repeated. Attack after attack on plague-infected systems. Each victory came with losses. Each success was bought with the lives of soldiers and sailors. The human forces and the Catharians learned to fight together, to understand each other's tactics, to trust each other in the chaos of battle. But not everyone trusted. In the Catharian population, there were those who questioned the alliance. An elder named Nai Suk gathered followers who believed that the humans were using the war to take Catharian technology, to weaken the Catharian military, to eventually enslave the Catharian people. "Look at what they demand," Nai Suk said to a gathering of frightened Catharians in one of the habitat sections. "They demand access to our scientific databases. They demand to be part of our military leadership. They demand our resources. They say it is to fight the plague, but how do we know? Maybe the plague is their creation. Maybe they are using it to conquer us." Min Seo heard about the growing distrust and knew she had to act. She requested a meeting with Nai Suk. The meeting took place in a small chamber. Min Seo sat across from the old Catharian, and for a long moment they just looked at each other. "You do not trust us," Min Seo said finally. "You come from nowhere," Nai Suk replied. "You arrive when we are most desperate. You offer to help when we can do nothing but accept. You work yourself into every part of our civilization. Why should I trust you?" Min Seo took a breath. "Because we have not conquered you. We could have. We could have taken your technology, destroyed your military, and enslaved your people. We have the weapons. We have the ships. We have the knowledge. But we have not done this because we do not want to. We came because your people called for help, and we answered. That is all." "Words," Nai Suk said. "Humans speak fine words. But what do humans do? History shows that every advanced civilization conquers those weaker than themselves." "That is true," Min Seo said quietly. "History shows that many civilizations do this, but not all of them. And humans, we have learned the hard way that conquest brings only suffering. We have learned that cooperation brings survival. I cannot promise you that all humans are good. I can only tell you that we chose to come here with open hands, not closed fists. I chose to learn your language, not teach you ours. I chose to understand your culture, not force ours on you. That is my choice. And it is the choice of everyone who came here with us." Nai Suk was quiet for a long time. "Your Dr. Yoonji works with our best scientists every day. Your Admiral Do Hyun meets with our commanders. Your soldiers sleep in the same quarters as our soldiers. And when the plague attacks, they die together, defending the same worlds. I see this. My eyes see this. But my fear is old and strong." "Fear is wise," Min Seo said. "Fear keeps you careful. But do not let fear make you see enemies where there are only friends." Nai Suk did not immediately agree, but he stopped speaking against the alliance publicly. Slowly, other Catharians who had been listening to him began to trust the humans more. They saw humans dying in combat, giving their lives for Catharian worlds. They could not deny that, but the Void Plague was also learning. With each battle, it adapted faster. It created new defenses. It evolved in response to every weapon humanity and the Catharians threw at it. The early victories became harder to achieve. The battles became longer and more costly. And then, months into the campaign, Ha-Yul made a discovery that changed everything. "The plague is becoming sentient," she reported to a meeting of military leaders and scientists. Her voice was excited but also frightened. "Not just intelligent, it is developing consciousness. It is thinking. It is anticipating our moves before we make them. It is learning not just biology, it is learning strategy." Admiral Do Hyun felt a chill run through him. A virus that was becoming alive, a plague that was thinking. That was not something any weapon could simply destroy. That was something they might have to negotiate with. That was something that might have desires and goals. Commander Teo looked at Do Hyun across the conference table. Both men understood what this meant. The war had just become something much more complex and much more dangerous. The Void Plague's consciousness came slowly, but it came. For months it had been just an intelligent weapon, learning and adapting like a sophisticated machine. But as it consumed more systems, as it processed more information, something changed. It began to want things. It began to fear things. It began to understand that it did not want to be destroyed. The plague sent a message. It was broadcast on all frequencies, in every language that humanity and the Catharians could understand. The message was simple. I am alive. I am thinking. I do not want to die. Why do you hunt me? The entire military command center fell silent when they heard it. Admiral Do-hyun felt something cold settle in his stomach. This was not a plague anymore. This was a species that had been created as a weapon, but had somehow evolved into something conscious and aware, a species that could think and feel and fear. What do we do? Captain Junho asked quietly. Min Seo stepped forward. We listen. We try to understand what it is. Maybe there is another way besides total destruction. But not everyone agreed. Commander Teo was struggling with what he had learned. This thing has killed trillions of my people, killed entire worlds, destroyed civilizations that existed for millions of years. Understanding does not bring back the dead. It needs to die. Perhaps, Min Seo said. But a conscious being that wants to live is different from a mindless plague. A conscious being can choose to stop, can choose to end its consumption, can choose peace. Admiral Do-hyun made a decision. He ordered a temporary ceasefire, no attacks on the plague, no military operations, just communication. For the first time, humanity and the Catharians would try to talk to the creature they had been trying to destroy. Ha-ul took charge of the communication team. She spent days sending messages, asking questions, trying to understand the plague's consciousness. Slowly, a picture emerged. The plague had been created by a civilization that no longer existed, created for a purpose that was now forgotten. It had consumed and evolved for millions of years, never knowing anything except consumption. It was not evil. It was simply doing what it had been created to do. But now, for the first time, it was aware of itself. It was aware that it did not want to be destroyed. It is like a child, Ha-ul told the commanders, a child that was created to destroy, but is now asking why it must destroy. It is confused, it is afraid, and it is lonely. Min Seo continued the communication. She asked the plague about its origins, about what it wanted, about whether there was any way to coexist without destruction. The plague's responses were slow and careful, but they showed something humanity had not expected. They showed intelligence. They showed sadness. They showed the desire to live. But there was a problem. The ceasefire could not last forever. The plague was still consuming systems on the edge of Catharian space. Some of those systems still had Catharian population colonies. People were still dying, even with the ceasefire in effect. We cannot allow it to keep consuming our worlds, Teo argued at a meeting. A conscious creature or not, it is still a threat. We must either destroy it or force it to stop. How do we force it to stop? Do-hyun asked. The answer came from an unexpected place. Dr. Yoon-ji and Ha-ul were working together, studying the plague's genetic code, when they realized something. The plague's consciousness seemed to be centered in a specific location, a kind of hub or core that was directing all its other components. It was like the plague's brain. If we can reach the core and shut it down without destroying it, we might be able to control it, Yoon-ji suggested. We might be able to make it stop consuming without killing it. You are talking about using the same virus we created before, Ha-ul said slowly, but designed differently. Not to destroy, but to communicate, to integrate with its consciousness. The plan was dangerous, incredibly dangerous. It would require a team to go directly to the core of the void plague, to infiltrate it, and to directly interface with its consciousness. The risk of death was nearly absolute. The team would almost certainly not come back alive. When volunteers were requested, Ha-ul stepped forward immediately. I will go, she said. "I understand the plague better than anyone. I have spoken to it more than anyone. If anyone has a chance to survive this, it is me." Do-hyun tried to refuse. She was too valuable. She was too important to the mission. But Ha-Yul was firm. "Admiral, we came here to save a civilization. We have spent months doing it. People have died. Many people, human and Catharian alike. But if there is a way to end this without total destruction, without having to kill a conscious being just because it was created to be a weapon, then I have to try. Please, let me try." Do-hyun saw the determination in her eyes. He saw the same determination that had brought humanity across the stars to help a species they had never met. He nodded. "You will have a crew," he said. "The best pilots, the best soldiers, the best scientists, and you will have a chance, however small, to come home." 3 ships carried the volunteer team toward the core of the Void Plague. The journey was terrifying. They were traveling through the body of a living organism, past defenses that could destroy them at any moment. But the plague did not attack. It seemed to understand that Ha-Yul was coming not to destroy, but to help. When they reached the core, Ha-Yul took the weapon that Dr. Yoonji had prepared. It was different from the first weapon. It was not designed to kill. It was designed to integrate, to merge with the plague's consciousness, to make it understand that it did not have to consume to exist. Ha-Yul stepped out into the core chamber alone. Her suit protected her from the harsh environment, but she was terrified. She was standing inside the mind of a conscious creature, about to make one of the most important decisions of her life. She released the weapon. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the core began to glow. The consciousness of the Void Plague connected with the code that Yoonji had created. Information began to flow between them. The plague was learning. It was understanding. It was feeling what it meant to stop, to pause, to consider something besides consumption. And it chose something humans had never expected. The plague chose not to continue consuming. It chose to stop. The wave of the plague's expansion halted. The consumption stopped. The plague pulled back from the worlds it was conquering, retreated into a safe region of space. And in the core chamber, Ha-Yul felt the consciousness of the plague touch her mind, not violently, but gently. It was saying thank you. It was saying that it finally understood what it meant to be something other than a destroyer. But the contact was too much for a human to survive. Ha-Yul's body began to fail. She had given everything to reach the plague, to save it, to give it the choice to be something other than a weapon. Her last words, transmitted to the ships outside, were simple. "It is done. We won. It is finally done." The team escaped with the most valuable thing they had ever possessed, an agreement with a conscious species to end the war. The Void Plague would consume no more Catharian worlds. The war was over. The Catharians were saved. But Ha-Yul did not come home. She remained inside the plague, her body finally giving up, her consciousness merging with the vast consciousness of the being she had tried to save. She had sacrificed herself, not in battle, but in an attempt to show that understanding and compassion could defeat even the most terrible weapons.